The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to RISmedia's webinar series, where today we are discussing essential relationships to increase sales. My name is Cleve Gaddis. I'm coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia. I am a team leader with a team here in North Atlanta. I'm also a coach and a speaker with Workman Success Systems, and I am really excited. I always enjoy moderating the occasional RISmedia webinar when I have the opportunity to do that, and when I do not, I always try to dial in because I am always learning good things. We have some of the best guests and best panelists throughout the country, and every time I attend one of these webinars, I learn something that I can put to use in my business fairly quickly. We've got a great one for you today. If it were not for our sponsors, we would not be able to have the RISmedia webinar series. So today we offer a special thanks to Quicken Loans. If it were not for them and their financial support and also their participation, we would not be able to have webinars like the one we're going to have today. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you are interested in asking a question, even if it's while one of the panelists is speaking, you can go to the questions tab or the questions box on your webinar, go to webinar menu, and you can type the question in. If it's an administrative question, something about your service or sound or things like that, somebody from RISmedia will be monitoring and they'll do their best to answer. If it's something that you want to ask of either of our two panelists or our sponsor, who is also going to be a panelist today, I will make sure and ask those during the call the best I possibly can. Also, at the end, I've got a couple of things that we're going to give away that are tied into the subject of today's call. One of them is something that I use in my business, and another is a tool that we use and teach in Workman Success Systems for people to help them grow teams and brokerages and whatnot. So let's go ahead and get started. Our two guests, we've got Ollie Berry, who's a broker owner of Quest Realty in Troy, Michigan, which is just north of the Detroit area, and I'll give a little bit more information on Ollie when it comes to his segment. And we've also got Gil Torres, who is the broker owner of Exclusive Realty and Mortgage in West Sacramento, California. I will give a little bit more background on Gil when it comes to his section of the webinar. I'm very excited to introduce Tom Dempsey, who is Divisional Vice President of National Sales for Quicken Loans. Tom, welcome, and thank you so much for sponsoring the webinar. We appreciate it.
Cleve, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here today.
Tom, tell us just real quickly, I know we don't want this to be a Quicken Loans commercial, but real quickly, let me give you the opportunity just to talk a little bit about the Quicken Loans Agent Relationship Manager and how that makes the process of working with Quicken Loans different than maybe it might be with other lenders.
Sure, no problem. Thank you. So we spent a lot of time, really trying to understand genuinely what kind of changes we can make within the industry in the agent-lender relationship space to make facilitating the transaction between two people smoother and easier, right? And while we have a different and unique way in which we approach the mortgage process, that created a few gaps in some of the communication. So recently we came up with our agent relationship manager and really identifying a single point of coordination for the real estate agent throughout the transaction. So whatever stage the loan may be in, that real estate professional has a single point of coordination, and I hesitate to use the word contact because there are a lot of folks involved in making sure things go right, but coordinating that experience and really trying to define the agent experience like we define our client experience. So we know that speed and certainty are key characteristics that real estate agents are looking for. How efficiently can you get it done, and how certain can you be in what you're doing? You can't have one without the other, right? You can't be certain and take forever to close a loan, and you can't be fast and not ever know when to close a loan or be careless. So really the overall goal with that, Cleve, is to try to limit the number of individuals the agent will come into contact with during the process. Purchase transaction is a little different, and we have a lot of experiences to make sure that we're creating. So the next time you're engaged in a transaction where you're working with Quicken Loans, make sure you inquire and ask about your relationship manager. You should proactively get that phone call from them. And we're excited to see how this works and appreciate the feedback that comes from it.
Excellent. And so that client, that agent relationship manager, I assume they have access to a phone, email, multiple different ways to keep in touch with that person, and really any questions go to that person. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and any question for that matter. And really, I think the second phase of this is making sure that we're able to streamline our communication preferences for how an agent wants to interact with us. So whether that is phone, whether that is email, and whether that or text message, push notifications, whatever it may be, and make sure that we're operating every time we interact with that particular agent the way they want to be interacted with. There's no point in texting them and then calling them and sending a follow-up email, although we generally want to make sure we get in touch. We want to follow the preferences. So, like I said, feedback is a gift, and we're going to try to learn and make sure that, again, we're making a genuine difference in the experiences we're creating.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And if you don't mind, Tom, don't mute yourself during the panelist discussion, because I might ask you a couple of questions. I was surprised you're kind of a sales animal yourself, so I might want to pull on you just a little bit during the webinar. Susan Bryan asked a question: will she be able to receive a link to the recording and listen to this later? She says she has to leave early, and yes, Susan, I know you got an answer already, but for everybody who's on, you will actually get a link. You'll be able to have a full video of the presentation, and you'll also be able to have a place to go and download everything when we're finished as well. First, I'd like to introduce Ollie Berry. He is the broker owner of Quest Realty in Troy, Michigan, which I believe, again, is just north of Detroit. He's got a background in financing, marketing, and sales. He was a high-performing mortgage professional for 5 years and then founded Quest in 2011. And again, today the firm serves the Detroit metro area. Ollie, welcome aboard. Thanks for participating.
Please, thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be part of this.
And am I right that Troy is just north of Detroit? Is that correct?
Yeah, we're about 40 minutes north of Detroit.
Okay, so a good bit north. If you don't mind, I don't know that anybody who's on today has any referrals they want to send to your area, but if you don't mind, why don't you give out your phone number and also maybe an email address or a website, whatever's most appropriate, so if anybody's got referrals coming to your area, they can send them your way.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything, we are a little bit more than just Detroit or Troy. We do all of Metro Detroit, let's say. So if you have something in the Southeast Michigan area, we'd be happy to help and reciprocate referrals if we ever can. My direct cell phone number is 586-557-8538. My direct email address is ollie@questsold.com. And after the webinar too, if anybody has any specific questions on some of the stuff that I went over, feel free to reach out to me at any point.
Excellent. Give that mobile number one more time.
Absolutely, yes. 586-557-8538.
Cool. So the title of today's webinar is basically, how do we produce more business through, it's not the title, it's the concept behind it. How do we produce more business through our strategic relationships? And as we started with the topic, I sort of expected the entire webinar to be focused on how do we have vendor relationships that deliver more value to our clients. And what was interesting, Ollie, is as you and I started talking, I realized that, oh my gosh, Ollie has such an unusual way of looking at, or certainly an appropriate way of looking at sort of the front end of the transaction. And, you're trying to do some things to make your team different than basically all of the other teams out there. So I know you started in the mortgage business, and if I might say, I think you worked for Quicken Loans, and so you learned a lot about the team environment and sales and things like that. So talk about, only having professional agents on your team and the power of teams, because, team is really a word that is used so loosely in real estate. In some cases, it's just two agents teaming up to take advantage of the broker, if you will. But you look at teams as something that's so powerful in the future of real estate. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I mean, my background and my setup is a little different than the normal agent and how they transpired into this industry. I did mortgages for almost 6 years. I started a one-man show. In Michigan, you can go and get your broker's license right away if you have 5+ years in a sister industry, which I did. I think that's somewhat of a burden because the first couple of years was very tough, but then I learned everything I needed to learn myself the hard way, and got the company now to where it is, where we have 10 agents. We have 3 or 4 that we just recruited that should be coming on here in the next couple of days. But to your point, I'm very selective with who I bring on to I call it a team. We are a brokerage. We're not a team, but I look at every aspect of our company as a team, because I feel that the true brokerage model of, hey, come work here and hold your license here and then just figure it out on your own. That's why, 85% of this industry fails, because they don't have the direction or the hand holding that they need in the beginning. So I try to look at everything in our entire company and the business as a team aspect, and how can we help each other get better. And we've just set up our entire company around that sense. So we do, team meetings, everything like that. So we really function as a team. To your point about, it being used very loosely, I do see that probably, I don't know, somewhere else, other areas in the country, but here in Michigan, it's used extremely loosely. There's agents that work for themselves that call themselves teams. So I think, as we move along in this industry in the near future here, you're going to kind of see things mold, and I think you'll see some of that stuff wean out. But I think the people that have the right vision in place and client experience as their main focus, those are the people that are going to continue to prosper and really flourish in the industry. So
I love it. A couple quick questions. In fact, the first one is for Tom, and it's, will Quicken also have their client manager get to know the broker's single point of contact? I would assume the answer is yes, but Tom, I'll let you answer that.
Absolutely, right. So we want to look and carve out whether it's a transaction coordinator, single point of contact, whoever that may be, or whoever has the most vested interest in wanting to be communicated with throughout that transaction. So that's the goal and focus and understanding of the relationship manager. We don't want them to just be, we want them to be able to build relationships far past the transaction they're currently working on.
Thank you. Hopefully, Audrey, that answered your question. And Cindy wants to know, is basically this webinar primarily focused on teams? And the answer is no. It's certainly things that are all applicable to a team, but it's really things that are applicable to brokerage or anybody in real estate, even if it is just an individual agent. I know you wanted to make sure that your agents were getting credit for all of their sales. And tell me why that's important to you. For even though it's a team, it's important to you for your agents to get credit for everything like individual agents, which is something, by the way, that even brokerages, I think, need to work on. Not that they don't get credit, but I want to make sure that that the sort of the concept behind what you're saying gets through to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things in this industry that most people have a hard time with is really getting over their ego when it comes to maybe a team leader or a brokerage in general. A lot of people, all they really care about is the face, right? I want, let me promote my company. Let me do this. Let me promote the team name. When really, the agents are out there doing, the day-to-day, the grind work. So I have found, and for me, I think it comes down to a matter of how do I sleep at night, right? So for me, I could never be in a position where my agents are out there, going to listing appointments, acquiring these listings, and then I tell them, hey, your name can't go on the sign, you can't have recognition. And I think if you go that route, and listen, everybody runs their business differently. So for people that do, more power to you. But for me, I found that to retain agents, and not just retain agents, but have extremely happy agents that are high level, that actually care about their clients, which is going to reduce risk when it comes to errors and omissions insurance. You have a happy office, happy agents. They need to be business owners, and you can't treat them like employees when you tell them, hey, you have to do this and you have to do this, but you can't get recognition for what you're doing. So for me, it's very important to make sure my agents understand that you work for the company, you're an independent contractor, you run your own business within the parameters of our business. So, and it's worked very, very well for us. We have 10 full-time agents, like I said, very, very high producing agents. This year, if all goes the way that I plan it to, we will be the #1 office as far as closings per agent out of any Metro Detroit office in the area. So I'm very proud of that, but it comes into, again, I think the sense of our culture, which some of it that I brought from Quicken in my time there, very similar with making sure that client service is at the forefront. Because I think if that's what you focus on, no matter what, at the end of the day, everything else will fall into place. So.
And I basically, as I was hearing your story about wanting full-time professional agents, and I'm like, okay, yeah, everybody says that. But when I realize it's equating to, 32, 35 transactions a piece last year, and you expect that to be around 40, I mean, if you create a business where your average agent is closing 40 deals, that's going to be a business that's going to have some stability. I know this is not a CRM commercial, but you said you're bringing on Chime. In fact, when I looked you up online before you and I connected, I went to your website and I recognized it as a Chime CRM website, and I know you're bringing on a transaction coordinator. Talk just really briefly for anybody who might be interested in why you're switching over to Chime, why you're in the process of that.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm kind of a nerd at my core. It comes down, I'm a big tech guy, and I truly believe in the way the industry is going and where we're at these days. This used to be a door-to-door, feet on the ground type of industry where, what you did and where you were mattered more. And now I think we're in an industry where the more you're in front of people matters more. So technology is going to play a huge role here in the very near future. And you may not have to be the best salesperson per se, but if you're good digitally and you can stay in front of people, you will win the game. So for us, it's really been a lot about systems that make things efficient for us. For me as a broker, a system that empowers me to not only see what the agents are doing, but be able to help them and help them grow. I've tried every single CRM you could ever possibly think of. And when I say every CRM, I mean every CRM. So I've gone through the trials and tribulations. Chime CRM to me has everything that with our setup we could ever possibly want. They handle our website. We have availability to customize our website however we want. It's very easy. Some of the biggest features for me that we were lacking in previous ones were, each of my agents have a dedicated mobile app on their phone where they can do 95% of what they can do from the computer. So that was one of the things we were lacking, for the agents to be able to do all this right on the go instantaneously. And then for me to be able to do the same thing. And if my agent has an initial call with a client, I can jump on my app, even if I'm, sitting at an airport, and I can listen to that call. I can take notes, and I can schedule a one-on-one coaching call with them right away, right from there. So it's things like that are very important, I think, for team leaders and brokers to have that information available, to be able to act on it and improve every day. With the transaction coordination, again, I think I'm very big on efficiency and putting the agents in a position where they're only focusing on the things that they really need to be focusing on. To me, it's not efficient for an agent to be going in and doing mundane tasks, clerical things that somebody else can do for them. But I also don't believe in a transaction coordinator taking over communication with the client, because at the end of the day, again, I want my agents to have that long-lasting relationship with their clients. So our transaction coordinator has a lot of clerical stuff.
I love it. And I know you have a special tool. We'll talk about that in a couple slides if you don't mind. One of the things that I thought was fascinating is I've never looked at having relationships with lenders as something that ultimately is a way for me to increase the flow of business through my brokerage. But the way you do it, you're so proactive about building relationships with lenders, and it really helps feed your pipeline. So let's talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, and I think, again, it probably comes back to understanding a little bit more about both sides of the business, because I did do both sides. But, I look at lender relationships as being probably one of the, not only the easiest, but the best relationships that you can work on and you can build. Because when you think about the process, I try to take things back to the initial interest, right? Before somebody comes to me, what do they do? So I build relationships with other people, insurance agents, inspectors, things like that. But these are mainly pillars that the consumer is not going to get to until after they would speak with a real estate agent. So for me, I look at it and say, okay, who are these people that they're going to get in front of before me? And really, the couple of the number one things here are going to be lenders. Obviously, that's your number one. You have some other stuff like accountants, CPAs, personal bankers, but lenders are your first and foremost for people that are doing things the right way. They're getting pre-approved. We all hope they're getting pre-approved first, right? So, but if you can build those relationships with multiple good lenders, right, then you have, and not just meet them, right, but build these relationships, stay in contact, stay in front of them, make sure they understand that when they have a client that you're both working with, you're going to make sure that this client gets out there and sees houses, finds a home, gets closed quickly. It's going to be a smooth process. Then when that mortgage banker has another client in your area, they're going to want to send that person to you because they know you're a rock star and they know that transaction is going to close quickly. And if you do that with 10, 15 different mortgage professionals, you could never need another referral again outside of that and be hunky-dory. So
what process do you have in place do you have a specific process that you have in place for your agents to follow in building those relationships with lenders?
Oh yeah,
and I
absolutely.
Know this might excuse me, this might sound like nothing new, but in reality, you know, people know what they need to be doing, but in most cases they don't do it. And so I think it's something that if we all sort of embrace and pay good attention to, we might find it's something we can focus our agents on. I know we've got a client in Houston, Texas that uses it as part of his business, and his business has exploded over the last few years, and it's all about lender relationships. So I think it's so important. I hope everybody's getting the importance of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I say the number 15, but I mean, realistically, think about the amount of transactions that you do, right? And your office does. The more relationships that you can have, and it doesn't just have to be when you go out and you have a transaction with a lender. You know, you go out to happy hours, you go to trainings, things like that, where you're going to be in contact with other professionals in this industry, in the mortgage industry. Give business cards, get out of your comfort zone, meet them, have conversations with them. People want to work with people they like. So for us, one of the things that we do to make sure that the process is really, really great, not just for the client, but also for everyone involved, is, you know, we have systems in place, Chime, and we use another system called Brivity, that we handle the transaction as a whole. So everybody's in the conversation, everybody gets updated periodically from our transaction coordinator. And I'm really big about making sure that everyone within a transaction is always updated. So if, you know, I'm the listing agent, the buyer's agent, if they have a transaction coordinator, their mortgage professional, all of them are updated periodically, and when I say periodically, probably weekly, just so they're always in the know. And then even if I'm not representing a buyer, that buyer's mortgage professional is getting updated by us, and they look at that and they say, wow, this is a great process, right? So then afterward, we can follow up with them, have a conversation, say, hey, if you have any business, we'd love to work with you, and just build those relationships and keep them informed.
Absolutely. So how did you find Brivity, and give everybody a little bit more information about how that works? How does the platform work so that your client can sort of see everything that's going on? Is it email? Is it text? Is there is it a web-based thing? How does that work?
Yep, absolutely. So Chime and Brivity are very, very similar systems. They're both full CRM systems. We use Chime as basically from inception to under contract, because I find that the mobile app, some of the stuff that Chime has is really more conducive to how we do business on the forefront. Once a client gets under contract, whether it be a buyer or a seller, once they're under contract, our transaction coordinator starts a transaction within Brivity. And we have action plans that are automatically assigned. So it basically is a task list that has different people assigned to different tasks. So there's tasks for the agent, there's tasks for myself as the broker, there's tasks for our transaction coordinator. And as we complete these tasks, we can set those specific tasks with our templates for the task list, to some of them to update the client. So for instance, if I have a task that says, you know, appraised value is good and cleared, once I check that task off, that client gets an email notifying them that that task has been completed. Another quick example would be on the listing side of things. If I have a listing and I'm helping a seller, once I post their property to Facebook or do some marketing initiatives, I check those tasks off. It sends it to my seller and says, hey, your property was just posted on Facebook and Instagram, so they can stay in the know about what we're doing. And it's really great. I mean, people want visibility, right? Like people do not like being in the dark. So that visibility that they have from us on the process, it's just a great client experience.
And I'm guessing that when you have a property, and although there are probably not too many in your area that take too long to sell, but when you have one that is taking a bit longer and you're keeping the seller totally up to date with all of the marketing activities, it certainly keeps them, for lack of a better way to say it, from blaming you for the problem, because they see all the stuff going on behind the scenes. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, in that sense, there's no question there of, are we doing our job, right? It's at that point, they understand that there's something else at bay here, and maybe that's price, or maybe it's just their specific property or the market, but they know that we're doing everything that we can, and it holds us accountable too, right? If we know that the client is going to get informed, we better be doing what we say we're going to be doing. So
it's amazing. And, in a lot of cases, and this sounds terrible, like I'm speaking badly about everybody in the industry, but in a lot of cases, the listing presentation doesn't match the listing marketing program. So what they say is going to happen doesn't match what does happen. And so certainly having that hold you to a higher standard. Now, I know for anybody looking at title saying CRM and property search, oh my God, how boring of a subject could there be? But I think there's a real problem, and maybe I'm the only one, in real estate, because people set somebody up on an auto search or an e-alert, or they've got different names, and they say, well, I'm just going to, set up a client, and the client's going to let me know when a listing pops up that meets their criteria. But that's not always the case. And so I really wanted you to discuss this, because not of the CRM and the property search, but specifically the hand-picked listings. I think it is genius. And so tell everybody about that, how it works, and sort of the results you're seeing from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I mean, it's selective to which clients you pick. There are some clients that really want to do a lot of this on their own, but we tell them don't spend a lot of time sitting on Zillow and Trulia because you're looking at outdated information. I kind of go over that right in my initial call with my clients. But we get them set up on a property search from our website, and you have the clients where we'll just set them up, and they want to go through every single listing on earth, so we let them do that. But then you have other people that have more specific searches, or maybe those people that don't have as much time to keep up on their email looking at properties, and they have a specific need, and they know exactly what they want, and they want an agent to do that work for them. And again, listen, we all know that we don't have time to go sit in the MLS all day long looking for properties for one client, right? It's not possible. So where this is amazing is we can set up that property search the exact same way that we would if we were just to have it automatically send emails to the client, but it kind of works through and works as the agent, as a buffer. So you set the property search up. When there's a new property that matches that criteria, Chime will immediately send me an email that says, hey, there's a new result that's a hand-picked listing for your client. And then I can either click yes, send it, or don't send it after I look through the pictures and make sure it's one that actually fits what they're looking for. And it sends them a more personalized email that says, hey, look through the results. This is one that I really feel is going to meet your guys' needs and what you're looking for. And it just makes it more of a personal experience for them, where they're not just getting that MLS link every single day so they can sift through things that they don't want to. So we've seen really, really good feedback from it.
Oh, that is so good. And in reality, I mean, I know as a broker that we're all accustomed to hearing the complaints and say, well, look, as the buyer, I'm finding all of the properties myself. And maybe, I don't know, what percentage of your agents would you say actually use the hand-picked listings portion? And that's in Chime, is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. That is in Chime. I would say right now, probably, I would say almost all of my agents use it. The percentage of leads that or clients that we actually use it for, probably about 10 to 15%. I think they're getting a little bit more comfortable with it too, because we made the switch a couple months ago to Chime. But it's for a specific client that doesn't want to sift through properties, but the ability to have that function and that feature for that specific client is priceless.
and I know this webinar is not about my opinion, but I think for everybody, I'd love to see 100% of my agents use something like that. So at least once or twice a week, they're saying, hey, did you see the one on Sycamore with the red door? Did you see the one on Oak Street that has, that's on that full finished basement? Oh my gosh, that bar was to die for. Anything to help the consumer feel like that agent is driving the process, because I swear, you put somebody in your CRM, you start sending them listings, and 6 months later, they say, take me off my list. And it's because they bought a property 4 months ago. And,
and you look like a rock star.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, you look like a rock star. You send it over, and this is what you were looking for. Here it is. So definitely.
And sometimes it's not what they're looking for, but it's what gets them started anyway. Ollie, thank you very much. You're doing some great things. You should be proud of yourself. You've got some great success with as little time as you've been in the real estate industry. And I know 7 years doesn't seem like a short time, but it is compared to some old dogs like me that have been in it closer to 20 years. Next, I'd like to introduce Gil Torres, who is the broker owner of Exclusive Realty and Mortgage in West Sacramento, California. He has a combined 15 years of experience in financing and real estate. He's a frequent seminar speaker covering first-time home buying, foreclosures, REO, and investments. And I believe, Gil, that Sacramento and West Sacramento are in the area where we've got a lot of those fires. So if you don't mind, I'd love to start by you give me an update. Is everybody in your area nice and safe?
Yeah, absolutely. In the greater Sacramento area, everyone's safe in that area. Obviously, we are heavily covered daily with the smoke that's in the area. I know that the recent update that I saw, they got a pretty good handle of it. I think it's like at 40% coverage now. But a lot of people that have lost their homes recently. So we'll continue to say prayers for them, and that everyone comes out of it okay, and they're able to get a hold of it pretty soon.
We'll do that from our area as well. I think I speak for everybody on the webinar today. It has been amazing. I've seen some of those pictures as people are commuting to work, and it literally looks like something surreal. I mean, it doesn't look like anything that is even real. So let's jump right into the things you're doing with vendors and the relationships you're leveraging to basically bring more customers and to create more income. And you do a lot of things, up front in the home sale process when you're working with sellers, and you do that through some strategic relationships with vendors. So fill everybody in on what you're doing. I have to admit, Gil, I'm going to steal these ideas from you because I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, our focus now is really on the listing side of the business. We've been very blessed to establish some really good relationships with similar lenders as Ollie, and have been pretty successful on the buying side of the transaction. And our focus within our brokerage and our team this year was to really focus in on getting more of the market share of the listings in our area. And we realized how it's been successful in forming relationships on the buying side of the transactions with lenders and other people, but we were really trying to get focused on the listing side of it. And we sat down at the end of last year and said, okay, how could we really have a leverage in the market with our relationships that we have already formed? So what we've done, and we've been very successful with, is forming relationships with those people that typically you wouldn't see until after our properties got into escrow, similar to roofers and home inspectors and termite reports. And a way for us to be able to leverage when we're competing on a listing appointment with other active agents in the area was to be able to offer kind of these services in advance at a discounted rate, to where we would actually acquire the fee or the expense to do some of the things like home inspections, roof inspections, termite inspections, house cleaning services, lawn cleaning services. So in forming those relationships with those particular vendors, we've been able to negotiate in advance, if we're able to utilize them, a discounted fee to where we would be able to offer those services to our sellers in advance, and getting those things kind of completed, or offering those type of services in advance, because we know how much time goes into a seller and getting their property prepared. But we offer that where we would pay for those services at a discounted fee, which our consumer is not aware of. And it allows us to be able to offer those additional services, but be able to keep our similar commissions, because as we know across the industry, we see that the commissions are being attacked and they're trying to come down. And so we've been very strategic in doing that, and it's been pretty successful in securing listings, especially when we're competing with other listing agents in our market area.
Absolutely. So what does a home inspection cost in your area? What's the average cost?
Yeah, so typically we're looking anywhere between 450 to 650 for a home inspection. And then you got a termite inspection
roof?
that's usually like yeah,
termite.
Roof is usually about 100. Termites usually about 120, and that's kind of retail of what a consumer would pay once they got into a transaction. So we've been able to obviously go ahead.
No, and I'm so sorry I keep interrupting. I'm embarrassed by that. But so that's about 775. It looks like 550, 650, 750, 775. And what does all of that cost you and your firm to be able to provide?
Yeah, so I would say on a typical transaction, yeah, not at all. So on a typical transaction, it's usually costing us about half the cost, of what it would typically cost the consumer if they paid for it after. And where it's really been strategic at is obviously we know that there's two reasons why a property would fall out of escrow. One is because maybe of financing, and two is because of condition of property. So, having that financing background or having somebody that could evaluate the financing of the buyers that are coming in really helps out with that aspect of it. But the unknown is really what's going to be discovered once a property gets into escrow, not only for a buyer, but most importantly for a seller. So if we're able to discover the unknown in advance with termite inspections, roof inspections, and home inspections, then at that point, two things. One is we're able to have the mindset that our seller is going to expect these things that may come up within like day 15 of the transaction, and we may have to renegotiate either the purchase price or do some repairs or offer some seller credit. So if their mindset is already kind of, hey, I know that this is going to be coming, I know the condition of the home inspection, the roof, and the termite, it makes it a lot easier to bring the two parties together in negotiating the transaction when it comes to that, and prevents it from falling out. But number two is we actually use that in an effort to try to get the seller in advance to cure some of those, like especially a Section 1 or Section 2 clearance, especially a roof to where we'll clear all the roof items and we're able to offer a 2-year roof cert. Those are the two items that we really try to get clearance from the sellers to prevent those unknowns. And then we're able to have a product that we're able to market with a clearance as well as a clearance for a roof and offering a 2-year roof inspection as well.
So for those of us who don't know what Section 1 and Section 2 items, give us a little detail. What are those types of items?
Yeah, so Section 1 items deals with active infestation of termites, whether they're subterranean termites or dry rot termites. Section 1 also deals with dry rot and fungus issues within the home. So those are typically what you see in Section 1 items. And then Section 2 items are typical items that you'll probably see in a home inspection as well, like a loose toilet, or maybe the faucet leaking or it's dripping or so forth. So if we're able to, a lot of those things, another thing that we've really done, and it's been pretty successful, is we forged some really good relationships with local handyman in the area, to where we have them on like an hourly rate. So if there's items that are on a Section 2, or if there's items that are on a home inspection, the typical homeowner is maybe not able to cure those items. Part of our services is that we'll maybe send out that handyman and they'll go out and they'll fix the loose toilets, they'll fix the dripping sinks, they'll fix the screens. So we want to try to alleviate and try to prevent as many issues as we can in advance. So that way, when it comes down to renegotiating or the buyer doing their inspections, there's maybe not that much that we have to worry about, or the mindset of the seller is that, hey, I know that this is coming, so I need to be prepared for it. Or also, on the buyer's perspective, we could actually show that we've done a lot of stuff with paid invoices from our handyman to say, hey, here's a home inspection. There was 10 items on it. We did 1 through 6, and here's the invoices for 1 through 6.
And I would assume you include that with your disclosures and other documents that you're providing with the listing?
Yeah, home inspections will normally send with the disclosures. We'll usually put a clearance of a termite, attach it to the MLS listing, or a roof clearance that will attach to the MLS listing, because those are 2 items that we could use and leverage to market the property. Clear termite, typically, it has to be a seller or a buyer that's going to cure those items. And if they're already cured, that helps out when we're negotiating in advance for the right purchase price. What we were dealing with a lot in our area was that we would have a lot of fallouts because of the renegotiations of home inspections or termites and so forth. And then we're having to renegotiate again, whether it's a purchase price or seller credit. So if we're able to handle a lot of that negotiation in advance, then it prevents the deal, there's less transactions from falling out, but also less negotiation that has to take place for the seller.
Which is huge. Got a question from Rachel. She wants to know if it is actually your firm that is paying that what would amount to be $387.50 per listing if you did everything based on your estimates. Are you actually paying that yourself as the brokerage?
Yeah, that was the main reason to negotiate in advance with our vendors that we formed a relationship with. You know, I went to them and said, hey, if we're going to be paying for these termite reports, these home inspections, these roof inspections, you know, then at that point, I'm going to be referring you a lot of business that I can control on the listing side of it versus being on the buying side of it. And if I'm going to do that, then I want you to be able to help me leverage this, and I need you to offer me a discounted fee for me to be able to utilize you moving forward. And because I was able to get that discounted fee, it made it more affordable to us to add that in regards to our services that we offer to the sellers and that we pay for, yes.
And how do you handle that cost with your agents?
Yeah, so similar to Ollie, like my brokerage, we have 14 agents. There's only 2 that are actually independent that have transitioned from being part of my personal production team as a team. That got to the point where they wanted to be independent at that point. And because I'm a broker owner, it's great and it's a win-win. So now I'm focusing on them and them growing their team. So with all my other agents, I mean, it's just the process that we do. It's the culture that we have. It's the systems and processes that we put in place for all of our buyers and all our sellers that are part of my personal production team.
Got it. Now, you did something which I think took a lot of guts to do. I mean, I don't know how many vendors I use on listings in my area, and certainly we could survey Ollie as well, but I'm sure I'll use 4 or 5 different vendors for marketing of my listings. But you chose to bring all of that in-house. So talk to me about how you sort of came up with the idea of bringing it in-house, why you did it, and then basically kind of how it looks today.
Yeah, that was part of our similar conversation that we were having on how to be able to get a good market share of the listings in our area. And we were looking at the cost of what we were paying to outside third parties for flyers, for listing fact sheets, for photography, for drone footage, for video marketing, social media marketing. And it was pretty substantial, not of what just my personal production team is paying, but also, you know, other agents and masterminding with other brokers, what they're actually paying. So last year, based off of leveraging our relationships and doing so successful on the buying side of it, we were able to invest in all the cutting edge technology that we wanted, that we were paying to outside third people. And then at that point, we were able to recruit an in-house marketing person that would be able to oversee all that. So now moving forward, as the first of this year, we have all of our marketing that's done in-house. So we do all of photography in-house. We do all of our drone footage, all of our video footage, all of our 3D imaging with a Matterport that we invested in. So all that is captured in-house. And so not only is it saving us of what we are paying for outside third vendors, but the other issue that we were having is that we were on everybody else's schedule. You know, we know how sellers are. We'll go to a listing appointment. All of a sudden, they want it on the market immediately, right? And so then we would call the photographer and we would call the videographer, and they would be booked because they're working with, you know, 30 other agents as well. And so not only did we want to save money, but we wanted to be on our schedule and our time. And that was another reason why we invested in it and have in-house marketing, because I could get somebody there hours after our listing appointment, be like, hey, you know what, we need to move this schedule around. This is a priority. We need to come here, take some photos because I need it on the market by, you know, tomorrow by 8 a.m.
And I would assume if there's little course corrections, maybe a couple photos need to be retaken or something like that, it's really very easy for you to do that. Whereas if you're using an outside vendor, sometimes it's like an act of Congress to get them to go back and correct anything. Am I right there?
Yeah, huge. So we're able to actually see all the editing that's taking place real time because it's right outside my office door where the marketing office is at. We can look at the videos real time when they complete the videos, and they'll call us in. We'll go in and look at the videos, and I'll be like, hey, we need to change this, edit this. You know, I don't like this photo here. And everything's kind of real time. So that's a huge advantage to us as well. And that's huge, you know, because it's very competitive. In our industry, when the market crashed, we only had like 2,400 agents in the greater Sacramento area. We're now up to like 7,000 plus agents that are in our area. And so it's huge. When we're going on a listing appointment, not only are we going against seasoned agents, but we're going against that relative that just got their license as well, where they have that relationship. So we really need to be able to stand out, offer a higher level of services, in an objective to be able to secure that listing, but also to be able to secure our commissions that we deserve and work so hard for.
Yeah, and that one relative that is selling their first house, very first house, got a comment from John in Washington State saying basically any collaboration with a home inspector, appraiser, septic inspector, or other vendors providing service for a buyer or seller would be against the law. And certainly, John, we are not saying that this is something that can be done in every state. You need to certainly check in your individual states. But what I find is that if somebody has a good system and a good suggestions, there are ways to work through it in every environment so that you can kind of do the same thing, whether it's you provide them a list of 3 vendors that can do it at a discounted rate, something like that. So, John, I wish I could speak a little more to that specifically. Thank you very much for your comment. Certainly check your laws in your area. This is another thing that I thought was interesting is that you created a relationship with a mobile notary that allows you to control more of that closing, more of that escrow process. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so what we were noticing, and Ollie could probably comment on this as well, is that we were obviously having our teams that were going out and working with our buyers, but we really wanted to try to get them into our facility, to be able to see our brick and mortar facility, to be able to establish more of a relationship, to get them to actually meet the team that they were working with, like our transaction coordinators, our operation managers, our team coordinators, and to be able to get that personal feeling. Because as we know, technology is there, data is there, but what's really going to stand us apart is that we want to be the agents that utilize the technology, and we really want to be able to forge that relationship. So what was happening is that they would obviously be going into escrow companies to be able to do their signings, or the mobile notary would go to the home to do their signings. And we really wanted them to be able to come into our facility to be able to do the signings. It's past, all the stressful time periods, all the negotiations, and now it's excitement time. They're coming in to sign their actual documents, whether it's for selling the property or whether it's for buying the property. But what they didn't want, and what they had an issue with, was actually spending the cost to get a mobile notary to either come out to the home or come into our facility, and they wanted to go into escrow, and maybe it was only like $50 to $60. So we really forged a relationship with mobile notary that was signed up with multiple title companies, and we wanted to be able to use that mobile notary to be able to be available in our office to do signings. So that way the client would come into our office, and we'd have the opportunity to introduce them to the whole team, to celebrate the signing docs, grab a photo at that point. But it was expensive. So what we've been able to do is we've been able to negotiate, again, in advance, and form that relationship with a mobile notary, a fee that was very reasonable. And that's just another fee that we will actually pay for on behalf of our client as kind of like a closing gift, to say, hey, you know what, it's a mobile notary. Yes, you got to come in and sign, but don't worry about the fee because we're going to pay for that fee for you. And so that allows them to say, okay, then I don't have a problem coming into your office versus going to escrow and sign the docs. And that allows us to form a closer relationship with that client, especially after closing.
And it's interesting because, if I was listening, I might be thinking, hey, there's nothing earth shattering about the things that are happening here. But when you think about it, you're taking the entire package and selling convenience. I happen to be in Atlanta, and Atlanta is always fortunate because we have like every model you can possibly imagine. They all start in Atlanta. They'll do Phoenix and Dallas and places like that, but Atlanta is typically always on the list. And so we face a tremendous amount of pressure from OfferPad and Open Door and Knock and companies like that are just selling convenience. And they've decided that the real estate process, in my opinion, is what they've decided is too difficult. And they're just selling convenience. And so what you're doing, you and Ollie both, is you're trying to make the real estate process more convenient for sellers and for buyers. And even though anybody in your area could do what you've done from a mobile notary standpoint, my guess is that most don't. And I think that would really give people a competitive advantage to sort of put together that package. Now, you've alluded to this a couple of times, but delivering more value helps keep your commission strong. I grew up teaching people to sell vacuum cleaners door to door, and so I worked for Electrolux, and it was all about building value. And if what we've given you so far is not worth $1,000, let's give you a little bit more. And I would assume that's what you're doing. You're just layering value on top of value on top of value. How's that affecting, without getting into specifics of the actual rate, how's that affecting your ability to hold your commission rates strong?
Yeah, very competitive. Our average commission that we're able to secure is like 6%, and if you look at the new agents that are coming into the industry and what they're able to negotiate and secure on their listings, it's much less than what what would be customary for us. And so we've secured plenty of listings where the first topic that a seller wants to talk about is commission. And all of a sudden they got this agent that's willing to, secure the listing for 3% or 4%. And so at that point, we always make it a point that we don't discuss commissions until we have the opportunity to schedule the appointment and have our full listing presentation. And usually at the end of our listing presentation, that encumbers all the services that we offer, which is usually maybe 1/4 of what is being offered from that agent that wants to, all of a sudden just put it on MLS and charge 3%. We're not having an issue, and we're not discussing and not negotiating commission when it comes down to, asking them, hey, so are we ready to sell your property? And usually they're signing right on the dot, just because of the additional services and how streamlined the process could be for them.
Amazing. Tom, if you don't mind, Tom Dempsey of Quicken Loans, let me ask you how important it is to the talk about a commodity. I mean, especially when most of the money comes from the same place. Quicken Loans is getting it from the same place that the local bank here in Atlanta, Georgia gets it. How is, providing that extra level of service, helping your company to, keep their revenue strong?
It's more than service, right? So what you're saying is it's 100%, it's everything. There's nothing else. Consumers are not looking to just go buy goods and services anymore. They're looking for companies and people and individuals to create experiences for them. I mean, look at what Amazon has done and transformed the buying of goods. And so it's no longer just, I'm going to go get a pair of pants here, or I'm going to go do this. They want to work with somebody that is going to create an experience. So that means you have to dial up your service. You have to dial up and be cognizant of the experiences you're creating. And quite honestly, relationships do that, right? If you think about any lender-agent relationship that's gone on for a number of years, I guarantee you that they've had a bad experience or a bad transaction, or a loan didn't close. But because their relationship is so strong, and they know each other, and they understand how each other works, and they have a history and a connection, it's not as bad than when you're working with somebody the first time and you have something go wrong. So we specifically certainly don't undervalue and diminish the importance of relationships, because that's really the difference between winning or losing, especially in this game.
And it's amazing, when I think of Quicken Loans, and again, not a commercial for Quicken Loans, but I see the Rocket Mortgage commercials all the time on television, and I think to myself, damn, that's quick. And I don't know anything about the process, but I think that's quick. And so everybody's looking for something that's simpler, that's easier for them, that takes a lot less effort. And it sounds to me like that's exactly what you're selling. Let me switch back over to Gil. Gil, I know that you provide people with a list of vendors that'll come out and get free estimates for handling inspection issues. Those maybe you didn't catch with that pre-inspection. And it could be that in Washington State and New York, we've also got a comment that might not be allowed there. But I'd assume that's something that's of tremendous value, because sometimes when people get a list of 4 or 5 things they need to do as a result of an inspection, they're overwhelmed. They don't know what to do.
Yeah, hugely. So, obviously, if somebody's looking for a referral, anytime they're looking for a referral, we usually give 2 or more suggestions of people who we forged a relationship with, know how we kind of work, know what we would expect in regards to the service that they want to offer our clients. And so if we're able to give them the list of, instantly of plumbers, handyman, roofers, electricians, and so forth, it makes it streamlined, because not the average homeowner has a list. They'll usually go to Yelp or Google or look in the area, but they obviously chose to work with us because we've been able to forge that relationship, and there's that trust value. So if we're able to refer them 2 or 3 people to actually call upon to be able to get some quotes or some services, it helps streamline that process as well. And the only way that we're able to offer that type of service is forging these relationships with these types of vendors.
I love it. And then you have a great idea, and you're probably not the only one in the country who does it. I've never done anything like this before, and I think it's genius. Talk to us about your 6-month follow-up plan, and God, I can't imagine anything that would be better for getting referrals from your home buyers.
Yeah, so in addition to forming those relationships with those handymans, what we've been able to do is, in regards to retention, is we have a 6-month follow-up call. That would be like, hey, just wanted to touch base, see how the home's coming along, see if you had any questions. In addition to that, we wanted to, see if you guys had a honeydew list, right? Everyone has a honeydew list. Everyone's moving into the home. They're getting settled in, switching all the utilities, switching schools, switching jobs, whatever the case being is. There's a lot that's going on to where usually that honey list builds up within that first 6 months. So in that 6-month follow-up and following up and seeing how everything is, we also tell them, hey, we'd love to be able to send a handyman over to your home for 2 to 3 hours and be able to try to knock out some of that honey list. So if you have a honey list that you would like to send over to us, send it over to us. We'll make sure that our team coordinator coordinates with our handyman on when you guys are available. We'll send our handyman out there. That service will be on us. Obviously, that's a pre-negotiated rate that we've negotiated with our handyman to help save us in regards to expense. But that's just another service that we offer, and it's a follow-up service for retention. And at that same time, we're then also able to ask for referrals. We'd love, our greatest compliments is referrals to, your friends, family, coworkers. Do you know anybody that's looking to buy or sell? And so it goes hand in hand. We're not just calling them, asking them for their referrals. We're calling them and seeing how everything's going, offering them some additional follow-up service, and then asking for that referral business as well.
Love it. And John just commented from Washington State. It seems like that as long as you're providing a list, that seems like that would be acceptable in Washington State as well. For those of you who are dialing in from Washington State, have you got any comments or social media comments or anything based on your 6-month follow-up plan? Because I would think you would really want to try to take advantage of the goodwill that would come from something like that to make other people say, well, dang, if I'm going to buy a house, I need to buy it from them.
Yeah, and so we ask that, they actually give us a review, or we ask for a photo op. One thing that we require from our vendors, if we're going to be utilizing them and they're going to be going out there, is that we would love for a photo of the handyman as well as our client and whatever they're fixing, plumbing issues, electrical issues, or something like that to that effect. And we ask that photo be sent to us because we like to be able to put that on social media. We ask for them to share it as well, and we ask for our clients to share it. Similar to like our moving truck that we have, for our clients to be able to utilize, free if they work with us. And we just ask in return that they fill it up with gas, and they do a little social media posting with the moving truck in front of their new home, and they're unloading stuff. It just allows us to get more traction and get more recognition in our market as well.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Gil. That's just a bunch of good information. And I know that as I think back on the things we discussed on today's webinar, I think, nothing is rocket science. Nothing is earth shattering. Nothing is so new that nobody else in the world does it. But in reality, we're in a huge culture today where people are willing to pay whatever they need to pay in order to have convenience and transparency and trust. As an example, we have a pest control service who takes care of our home, and always a week before the service, we get a recorded message that says when they're coming out and what the items are or the bugs are they plan to treat for. And we get another call the day before, and then after they do the service, they leave something that says what they put out, the quantity of what they put out, and what they were treating for, and if they saw anything specifically. And in reality, I don't know if that service costs more than other services or less than other services, but I don't really care because, in my opinion, I feel like I'm getting what I'm paying for, so it really doesn't matter. And I know that sort of sounds strange, but I think this stuff is so important when it comes to building a business, because I think the market is only going to get more and more competitive. I think from a lending standpoint and also from a real estate brokerage standpoint. And I think we all need to be prepared to offer services that are much higher than what people can provide from someone else. We just had Nola log on and said, I couldn't get connected until now. Will I be able to listen to the recording? Yes, you'll get a link, Nola, to the recording so you can listen to the webinar from start to finish. Real quickly, Ali, thank you very much for joining us. Do you have any last minute comments you'd like to make?
No, I think everything was real great info as well from Gil. And, like I said, if anybody has any questions specifically on what I went over, feel free to reach out to me. The processes that we use, or the systems that we use, everything.
Thank you so much for being willing to share. Gil, I did not give you the opportunity. Now, you're in West Sacramento, which I assume is right there at Sacramento. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So we're in the greater Sacramento area. So obviously, would love to be able to network and exchange referrals amongst my peers. So, if any of you guys have any questions, or if you have any referrals for our market area, you can feel free to reach out to me on my personal cell phone, which is 916-764-5496. And once again, thank you very much. It's been an honor to be on here with Ollie, with you, Cleve, with Tom as well. I have a strong relationship with Quicken Loans, goes back for many years as well. I've learned a lot from them as well. So thanks a lot, Tom. I really appreciate it, and it's been an honor.
Oh, love it. Thank you for your time. Couple free giveaways if you go to workmansuccess.com/relationships. Again, that's workmansuccess.com/relationships. You can download for free 2 different documents. Number one, a sample roles and responsibilities, which is an 8-page document, which actually defines, as we see them, the roles and responsibilities for a real estate assistant, for a showing specialist, for a listing specialist, buyer specialist, inside sales associate, or a client care coordinator, or someone who is helping you generate and convert leads, and also for a listing manager job. You all can get that downloaded for free. Real quickly, Gil, will you give your phone number one more time? Irma would like to get it, and her connection cut out while you were giving your phone number. This is Gil Torres in West Sacramento.
Yeah, absolutely. So I could be reached at 916-764-5496.
Now, this next document, thank you, Gil, is something that may or may not work in your area. I have found that if you let a buyer think they only have one option when it comes to something on an inspection report, when they're doing an inspection of a property they're planning to close, that they tend to ask the seller to make way more repairs than they would otherwise. And so we created a document for reviewing a home inspection. So look at it like a legend for a map. It says, hey, customer, here's what we do when we review an inspection report, and we check a yes or a no, or we check it as a comment from the inspector, or we need more information, or I need an allowance for it, or it's something I want to do later. And we use this with our buyers. So we send it to a buyer. They review this document. At the same time, they're reviewing the home inspection, and then the agent and the buyer are marking the report using the same markings. And it's amazing how many things that used to be problems for a buyer wind up not being problems when you give them the opportunity to say, hey, it's something I want to take care of after my closing, or maybe it's just a comment, or maybe I just need to get more information from the seller. So feel free to download both of those at workmansuccess.com/relationships. Thank you again to Quicken Loans and Tom Dempsey for being on the webinar. Thanks to all of you for joining us. I hope you have a very productive month of August and a great remainder of 2018. Take care.